Okay, we are recording. Hi everybody, I'm Daryl Leary, and this is one of my best friends, Mark Decker. And I've done what I think has already been a considerable amount in my attempt to get onto the Dr. Phil Show. And if you want to see what my previous efforts have been and my emails to Dr. Phil and the letters I've mailed to him and the other YouTube videos I've made for him to get his attention, you can check out the description, the link in the description below the video. I'll put a link there, and then I'll add an additional link to the basic story, my bullying story of what happened to me. Okay, so basically, the reason I want to get onto the Dr. Phil Show is I want to tell my story. And the reason I think my story has importance is because I want to emphasize what I think is not really well known, is that bullying can affect a person long into their adult life, even after the bullying has stopped. I believe that it can shape your very personality. It can introduce psychopathologies like possible mental illnesses like depression, anxiety. It creates a negative self-concept in that person that introduces dysfunction all throughout their adult life, and that dysfunction, of course, adds on to itself. It builds onto itself like a snowball effect. So this is the main message I want to get out to the world by trying to get onto the Dr. Phil Show to tell my story. So now we're going to talk about a whole new paradigm on the bullying issue. We're going to talk about what we think are answers to the bullying issue.
Fair enough.
Okay. So, personally, I think the first problem, the way I would address the bullying issue, is I think there's a flaw in the mentality concerning the bullying issue. Now, by that I mean examples like, for example, people say, well, kids will be kids, right? To dismiss, one kid's actions against another kid's actions.
Well, they're dismissing
right?
how serious it is.
Or exactly, right? And I also feel that that's almost equivalent to saying, this may be an extreme example, but like if we're talking about rape, for example, right, or date rape, right,
Mm-hmm.
and we say, well, men will be men.
Yeah. It's a similar thing. Absolutely.
It's a similar thing, and I think another problem with the mentality is that, people say, well, kids need to learn to socialize, and it's this idea that, if you just let kids out into this world to figure things out for themselves, they'll learn how to problem solve, and they'll learn how to socialize with other kids and figure out all their problems. But I don't believe that children or tweens or teenagers are capable of governing over themselves.
Well, and not only that,
without adult guidance.
Well, Lord of the Flies.
Exactly,
right?
Lord of the Flies. Yeah, that's the first.
But then the other thing is, in the adult world, if I was physically pushing someone around or hitting them,
right,
I would be criminally charged.
Yeah.
And if I was taunting them all the time or stalking them, I would also be criminally charged.
Yes.
Yet if kids are doing it, it's so often it's like, oh well, they need to learn to figure that out for themselves.
And I also believe
It doesn't make sense.
I also believe that to leave kids out there to try to figure out how to problem solve their social issues, is like a form of neglect without guidance, from the adults involved in their lives, like their parents and such. And I believe that when kids are neglected in such a way, they tend to grow up dysfunctional.
Yeah, true enough. I mean, the extreme example of that is John Douglas, who worked at the, well, he was one of the founders of the criminal behavior profiling. So they would, the psychological profiling of criminals and serial killers. And he said, like serial killers, every single one of them was either abused or at the very least was severely neglected and had a lack of attention and love. And he said every single one of them. So it shows you that, you know, and I would also think that there's enough issues and problems in life that kids can learn from those experiences and learn how to deal with those things with guidance and help, even if they're not being bullied.
Yeah, yeah, and of course another problem with what makes the mentality problematic, you know, is this idea that, well, bullying is just a part of life.
Right.
I went through it, everybody else went through it, but I think what we have to be, what requires critical thinking on our part is that there's different degrees of it.
Yeah.
You know, there's kids who are bullied by maybe one other kid. There's sometimes kids who it's as if the entire school turned against them. You know, rumors have exploded beyond, you know, control. So
well, yeah, and there's also there's a big factor that if kids see somebody being bullied by somebody else, if they join in, or at the very least, if they laugh and kind of support it that way,
right,
then they're not being bullied. See, they're on the team of the bully.
Right.
And that happens a lot. That's very common. It's a very safe route to take.
Yeah, well, it's always like a three-party system, right? You know, there's the victim, the bully, and the bystander.
Right.
And even the mere fact of the bystander just sitting by and watching it occur almost gives support to the bully.
Sure.
Because
it's like if you're not protesting, you must be agreeing.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. So I think the first part of the problem is addressing the mentality. Now, when it happens in the schools, this is see, I think it has to be attacked head on in the schools. It has to be targeted head on in the schools, because I think, see, bullying doesn't just occur just in the school ground, right? It occurs in all aspects of life, right? So like domestic abuse, I mean, that's a form of bullying, right? I mean, bullying occurs in the workplace, right? You know, people go to fast food places and bully employees all the time, right?
But I would say that it's more prevalent amongst kids.
Yeah, but what my point is that it's first learned and first experienced in the school.
And also, it's less punished. Because if you're a real bully as an adult, you can be charged with a crime. Whereas with kids, they almost never do that.
Right. And there was one point that you were very emphatic about, that you really wanted to emphasize, that it's up to the
Adults in the school.
It's up to the adults in the school. Can you expand on that?
Well, you've experienced this, I've experienced this. If you talk to adults in the school, that's the teachers, the staff, the principal, and maybe even the parents, but let's just say mostly the school staff.
Right.
A lot of them are still saying, oh, we don't have a bullying problem in our school.
Yeah.
And every school has some bullying.
Yeah.
And the majority of the schools have a bullying problem. It's severe enough that I would call it a bullying problem. And so when the adults are in denial, you can't fix something that you don't acknowledge is going on. And I've actually been with a friend, and he was doing an anti-bullying workshop, and I could see a kid in the audience. These other girls wouldn't let her sit with them. So that's a form of ostracization. It's a form of bullying. And none of the teachers are aware of it because they're not paying attention and they don't want to see it. So I would say, number one, if you want to attack bullying in society, my opinion is you've got to address it in the schools.
Yeah.
And because that's where it's most prevalent. And second of all, it's got to be the adults. The adults have to be willing to, like you say, address the problem and attack it head on. So be proactive instead of only reactive.
Yeah.
And they also have to be willing to, by being proactive, set up some sort of programs and whatever that entails to foster an atmosphere in the classes and in the school where bullying is frowned upon and not accepted, and replace that with we're all on the same team, we're all helping each other.
Like a library atmosphere where it's like very clear that everybody must maintain a quiet profile.
Whereas in the school, everyone must maintain a profile of teamwork rather than bullying.
Right. And so, you know, like one thing I remember experiencing was like, I remember like being attacked like in drama class, like just without provocation. And the teacher just stood there and watched, you know.
Wow.
And
Were you physically or emotionally attacked?
physically attacked, yeah.
And the teacher just watched?
And the teacher just watched, yeah.
Wow.
Almost like she didn't have a clue like how to respond or
Right.
Well-
Maybe she was scared too.
possibly. So I mean, it was a bit of a physical fight, you know. I had to defend myself.
Wow.
But I mean, what typically would have happened is right away the authorities would have been like, okay, two people fighting, let's punish these two people.
Both of them, yeah.
Yeah, let's punish both of them, you know.
Yeah, I've experienced that as a kid.
So there's this whole idea of like, yeah, you know, if there's conflict, just punish everyone that's involved in the conflict without investigating, you know, what is happening.
Yeah.
So I mean, we need direct intervention, immediate and direct intervention by the people, by the adults that are governing the schools.
Yeah, and actually we need them to be proactive before they even see bullying, right?
Right. I mean,
Because you don't want to be in the school and you get bullied and then it's addressed, and then you get bullied and then it's addressed, and you'd rather have it prevented.
yeah.
Ideally.
Yeah. I mean, you know, and I've thought a lot about this. I think there has to be an anti-bullying curriculum in the schools.
Yeah.
Now, I think the curriculum in its form should it should advocate this basic principle of how society functions, because the way I understand society is that society is like a beehive, and every bee has its niche, its role, its purpose to fulfill. And for society to properly function, we need all sorts of different personality types, all sorts of different aptitudes, all sorts of different levels of intelligence, athleticism, and so forth. You know, like you wouldn't want, you know, like for example, you know, if you have someone who's like just naturally aggressive and athletic, he wouldn't be the best profile for a psychologist, for example. You know.
Well, a person could be both sometimes, but
Yeah.
But you're saying if that's really their field of expertise, you know, like you're right. We have our society is made up of a lot of people that have specialized in one field or another. Absolutely.
Yeah, and some people, you know, like I've been to a number of different counselors and psychologists and this type of thing, and there needs to be, you know, different counselors of different personalities. You know, because one personality might relate to me better or be a match for my personality than another one would.
Right.
You know, so therefore one would be far more beneficial for me. It takes different types of people to be able to relate to other different types of people.
Yeah.
And so I think that needs to all be part of this so forth bullying curriculum, where it's emphasized that, you know, just because this person is shy or timid or over empathetic doesn't make him null and void in this world, but that he's an asset in his own way.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's been all kinds of people that were outcasts, right? I mean, like Einstein was told that he was semi-retarded as a kid, right?
Right.
Pablo Picasso was told he'd never be an artist. You know, there's people that are different, but they can have a skill or an interest that's going to benefit everybody. And you compared it to a beehive, and I always think of it like as a team. Like, I mean, in the military, I know that
like you said, it's either survival of the fittest, or it's all for one and one for all.
Yeah, it's either dog eat dog, and do you want to live in that kind of society?
Hell no.
The reason we have police and laws is because we don't want, you know, our friends and family to get attacked and raped and robbed and etc. Right?
Yeah.
And I mean, there's so many kids you hear like they're scared to go to school every day, and they don't even want to tell their parents. And you know, I have seen a film years ago about this teacher that really fostered a mentality of they were all part of the same team. And
right.
like, you know, if you were good at spelling and I wasn't, then he would team those two people up, and they had paired everybody off, and then they had like the spelling Olympics, and then they would get little prizes or whatever. And he said you got to make sure that everybody gets a prize at some time. Could be the most improved, or the most persistent, or the most on time, but you got to like reward people and honor them with something, because everybody's good at something. And in the military,
and I remember you were saying before, when you two were telling me the story before, like, for example, you know, like, he even considered like minorities and the challenges they face. And for example, he would have like the one black girl in the class be the lead role for a play or something like that.
yeah, he actually had every I think it was grade 6, so these kids are like 12, 13 years old.
Right.
He said he had plays throughout the year, Shakespeare and stuff.
Right.
Every girl got to be a heroine in a play, because he said that's right around the time of age when they're going to lose self-esteem. A lot of women do.
Right.
And he said it was important for them to feel like they could be a hero in some way. But even the military, Daryl, like the Navy SEALs, right?
Right.
They do a lot of exercises and tests where you're not graded individually. You're graded in like your whole team has to complete this task. And if one person is lagging behind, you have to help them. Because when you get sent out as a team of like 5 or 6 people, your number one task before you address your goal is to take care of each other. And as a team, you're going to be better than if you bully one person or leave them behind, because you need each other. And it's the same thing in life. If we have if the classroom works as a team, or if you're at work, I mean, not that I'm a big fan of Andrew Carnegie, because he was pretty rough on some of his workers, but he did say, and he owned a lot of companies and industries, he used to say, I don't care if you're like a top excellent worker, if you are creating problems in getting along with people at work, and it's just not working, you're a disruption, I'll let you go. You get a warning, but if it keeps happening, and even Elon Musk, he does that with his companies too, he says, don't be an asshole. Mm-hmm. He said, you can be very, very talented, but if you are pissing people off all the time, or you're angry all the time, or you're bullying, after a couple of warnings, we're going to let you go. Now, in school, not advocating letting them go.
Right.
But, you're right. It has to be addressed because our society, our companies, our schools will.
Well, evolutionarily, we've survived because of teamwork.
As a team, absolutely.
I mean, the whole concept of a social species is based on teamwork for survival.
Yeah, yeah. And every primitive tribe had rules about conduct and about sharing. Like if you had a boat, someone else didn't, you couldn't refuse them to use it. If you caught a game animal and food was scarce, you are not allowed to eat the whole thing. It gets shared up.
Right.
Which is a way of creating harmony versus bullying, really.
Now the thing I wanted to bring up was, I always felt that schools always celebrated academic performance above moral aptitude.
Yeah, there's no real awards for empathy and morality, is there?
And there has to be. That's what I would suggest is like part of this like bullying curriculum, you know, is that we celebrate and achieve moral aptitude, because honestly we want to be in a society that is morally functioning, because otherwise what's the point? You know, I mean, nobody wants to be part of an immoral society. I mean, we had those immoral people in Wall Street that got rich off everybody and caused like an economic global crisis.
And not only that, studies show that these people that become like extremely wealthy, now there might be odd exception, but I'm just saying in general, that if you have a society where it's more equal and everybody's helping each other, that everybody's happier. Not just the poor that are less poor are happier. The rich that are part of a society and not ripping everybody off, they're actually happier in their old age too.
Yeah, and I'm also criticizing the school system, because I'm also saying that it's illogical not to advocate for morality, because I believe a moral society is far more functionable than an immoral society.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, but so curriculum is one thing that I would have.
You would have it as part of the curriculum, and you're also graded on it.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know,
and it would get people ahead in life, because a friend of mine, his son, he worked part-time at a legal firm, just as like, you know, photocopying, running errands, whatever, right, when he was in high school. But he was such a positive person, and he was so thoughtful and polite, that these people, when he was like graduated high school and he decided he wanted to move to Toronto, they actually got him a job at a legal firm in Toronto, just because they liked him that much. Now, if he'd been like thoughtless or only caring about himself, there's no way that would have happened. And it even got better. The law firm in Toronto liked him so much that they said, if you want to go to university, we'll pay for all your courses. So I think you're going to, if that's part of the curriculum, morality, empathy, that kind of thing, it'll make a much better functioning society, but it'll also help people be much more successful in social situations and in financial situations.
Right.
A lot of people do business with people because they like the other person. I mean, I've had that even when I've just been selling used speakers. If the guy is like really rude, I don't feel like selling it to him. I'd rather sell it to someone for less who's not that rude.
Right. Now, what do you think about the idea of restorative justice for the bully?
I can only agree with it, because
maybe we should explain what restorative justice is.
Sure.
Restorative justice is sort of like a new concept where...
Well, it's new in the mainstream. The native people have had it like way before the white people got here.
But say you know, like a 15-year-old kid throws a rock through a neighbor's window, you know, what would happen is, instead of just arresting him and putting him in juvie or whatever, what they would have is they would have him confront the family of that home would confront him, and they would all talk about how it impacted them financially, and how they might have been scared or whatever, like how it impacted their lives, you know, because of that, and also the person who committed the crime would also do something to sort of fix the problem. So it's teaching people how to fix their mistakes, but it's also building a sense of empathy in understanding that what they do has consequences on other people.
Yeah, and like, you know, if let's say a 15-year-old breaks the window,
Yeah.
ideally he would also work in lieu of that, or work somewhere and make some money and pay for the window. If it's a 3-year-old, you know, maybe they could pick up garbage and make like $10 or $20 and then pay that. They can't necessarily pay the $500 for the window. But
so like, because like, I know that Dr. Phil is really keen on this idea of treating the bully, okay, versus punishing the bully, right? So I'm guessing what restorative justice would sort of look like for the bully, if the schools had implemented it, would be just a casual discussion between the bully and the victim, and the victim basically talking about how it impacted them, and maybe even the victim's parents and their parents could talk about how they felt seeing their kid being bullied, and talk about that, and then the bully might realize that, hey, it doesn't just impact this one kid, it impacts other people that are connected to this kid in his life. Because I always thought about this, right? You know, I always thought about, you know, a lot of kids, you know, like when they bully another kid, they figure, well, you know, I don't like that kid, you know, I'm just gonna pick on that kid, right? And
it's not always I don't like. Sometimes it's also they can sense that something about that person, they're not gonna fight back that much, right? It might be an easy victim.
Sure, but I also get the sense that they only see it as a one victim crime. That they don't.
And they might not even think that much about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And they're not thinking in the forefront of their mind that it also impacts that victim's parents, and might impact grandparents, and might impact their brother and sister, you know, so there's so it's
Well, how can it not?
well, exactly, you know, like, you know, because there's so many parents out there, and they, you know, they love their kids so much, and they wish nothing but the best for their kid, and then their poor kid is just being, you know, picked on by these other kids, and it's just something that's always been in my mind. I mean, I'm not completely sure how the whole restorative justice part would look on that, you know.
Well, I think you described it fairly accurately.
Yeah.
I mean, what I've seen online, you know, like the Native people in North America, they had that way before the white people arrived, and it wouldn't surprise me if you've had it, like, you know, in the Middle East, you've had it like in Africa. People, as crude as it sounds, people used to be like, if you injured or murdered somebody, your family would have to pay a certain amount of money. Now, as crude as that sounds, that is a type of restorative justice, because it doesn't make up for it totally.
No.
But there is some kind of reparation made, and that also means now these people are not supposed to go back and try to get revenge. They're supposed to move on, right? Because if you get revenge, okay, now we're going to kill 2 or 3 of you, now we're going to kill 5 of you, and that then creates a war, right? Or at least a long-term feud. But another thing is, like, I was reading about this the school system in Finland. is considered the best in the world as far as the level of success with their education. But they've also supposedly have one of the best anti-bullying programs, and it's very proactive. There's something like 97% of their schools participate in it. And what they do is they do address the bully, and they also address, they said one key thing is they educate all of the students about not just being a bystander that does nothing. Because they said it's extremely common, even kids that feel empathy and feel like I don't agree with this, it's most common for them to still stand by and do nothing, which, like you said, can be by the bully seen as an agreement.
Yeah.
So what they do is they actually do role play. And I think, it sounds very simple, but I think it can be very effective, because they basically, they have math classes, they have history classes, they have life skills, and the anti-bullying is part of that. They have sex education. But the anti-bullying, they do role playing where somebody's the bully and somebody's the victim, and then they switch it up again. And what it reminds me of is when I took self-defense class, we did role playing. You're the aggressor, you're the bully. And it's role playing, but when someone starts being aggressive and they're mouthy and they're putting you down and they're calling you names and they move closer in, you do feel that intimidation in that attack, even though it's just role playing. And I think that you feel that enough, that it's real enough, that you get more of a sense of what it feels like to be bullied.
Right.
And I think that's probably one reason why their program is they said 98% of bullied kids in those schools have said that this program has made them be a lot less bullied, that it's had a real positive impact. That's a pretty high success rate. They're not saying it's 100%, they're not saying it's completely solved. It's just that 98% of bullying victims have said it's improved a lot for them through this program. And so, and another thing that I think is really smart is it's a national program. So, rather than, for example, you and I going to speak at like one school, and you get certain teachers that are really leaders with this, so you might get, out of 30 teachers, you might get 12 that are really gung-ho. That's great. But to address it nationally is really to address the problem.
What do you think about when people say things like, well, everybody knows about bullying. It's been all over the news, all over the media. Because I hear that sometimes. Okay. And the thought that comes to me is, yeah, everybody knows about it and everyone knows it's a problem, but the point is, everybody knowing about it doesn't really help the situation, because it's still a big problem.
Yeah, just knowing about it does nothing.
I sort of feel like, especially like in the media, like I wrote letters to the local media, like here in Edmonton.
And one time you contacted every school division too, right?
I did. I shared my story with every single school trustee in Edmonton, every single school and every single principal, even the Minister of Education.
So if the school board had like 8 people on it, you contacted every one of those individually?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I never got a response from the media. I really get this strong sense that like the media sort of considers it a bad story. It was like, bullying is sort of the millennial story.
So do you think that it was like, if you had contacted them like 4 years ago, you might have got on a show or something, and now?
Yeah, okay. Exactly.
So it's kind of like we've done that, but we all know about it now, and it's better now. That's what
I don't even think that's their thinking. I think, yeah, whatever interest there was in public interest there was in the bullying issue, it peaked 5 years ago, and then and then that peak is gone. People are now interested in other things, you know.
See, in any given classroom or any given school, if the adults there are able to drastically reduce the bullying and create more of a team mentality and everybody helping everybody else, that's actually going to have more benefit than if, for example, they raise everybody's mark by 10%. You know, it's allocating time and effort. Well, actually, I think it'll probably help people's marks too, because if you're being bullied or you're busy bullying people, that's going to reduce your mark at school. But I'm just saying, like, you know, I went to school, I learned things, but I mean, a lot of subjects was just memorization. And if I remembered a bit less, it's not like, you know, especially in today's world, you can look stuff up very easily. So
Right.
I would say you're right. Putting that as part of the curriculum, part of the goal of the school system, is very important. Very important.
Yeah. And you know, I mean, I think we need to introduce a new paradigm when addressing the bullying issue, because I think a lot of people view it as a one victim crime, and a lot of people think, well, I think a lot of people have like a reactive sort of like an answers orientated solution to it. So it's like, you know, Bob here is being bullied in school, so let's see what we can do to make that stop. And then the bullying stops, and then it's sort of like this idea of like, okay, well, problem solved. But I think bullying can have an economic impact.
Of course it does.
But I don't think people realize that. You know, it's like I feel like I'm a good example of that.
But you bring that up because you think that would motivate some people that are not motivated otherwise.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I think so. Like, you know, because
So we want people to be nicer to kids, not because we care about the kids, but because it's going to make everybody more wealthy.
Well,
I'm just saying.
That's obviously not my intention, right?
You know.
But I know,
whatever
like,
it takes,
some people look at things in a pure economic sense, right? And so, yeah, you know, you get someone like me who's been like severely bullied, and then has ended up with pathology of like social anxieties and chronic depression, and
well, yeah, it's going to affect your lifetime earning capability, absolutely.
And it has, you know, it has. So that in itself has already had an economic impact on society. But not only that. I mean, people were like, when I got bullied in school, right? I mean, my school marks plummeted, right? I barely got my high school diploma, only after dropping out of high school, a couple years going back to adult college, and then getting my high school diploma again.
Where did you go for that?
ABC.
Okay.
But my point is that there's a lot of high school dropouts because of bullying. So these dropouts are people that are not going to become doctors or lawyers or enter any type of high profession that may have a greater benefit to the community.
So yeah, you're right. A lot of those people are going to not be able to reach their full potential.
Yes, and that's what I'm really trying to emphasize. But also, I've thought about this too, right? It's like, and I know, I'm like taking myself as an example, because everything I know about the subject is based on my own personal experience. But the thing is, when someone's been bullied for so long, you know, it negatively affects their self-concept, which is, you know, their social confidence, their self-esteem, you know, all these things. And when you have an adult with low self-esteem because of bullying in the past or traumatic bullying, right, or something traumatic, then I'm willing to bet that when they have kids, they tend to raise kids with low self-esteem. And then those kids become vulnerable. So I'm proposing, and I believe this, that it can affect future generations.
Sure.
See, this is really why I want to be on the Dr. Phil Show, because this is all part of my message, right?
Yeah, you're on a mission.
Yeah, I'm on a mission, yeah. And that buzzing sound.
You know, I think it's got something to do if there's a car there. I'm not saying it's great, but yeah, I mean, worst case scenario.
Whoever has watched this to this point, thank you so much for putting up with that
if it's
sound.
really bad, we'll have to redo it, like in your basement or something.
Yeah, I'll have to check the audio after the fact and see how it works.
Right.
But, I think I need to take a smoke break.
Okay.
And then we'll shoot a little bit more.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Like if there was a very effective national, even international, because actually the Finnish program is now being started in the Netherlands and in the United States, in one of the eastern states. You know, can you imagine you go to a school and you feel valued, you feel supported, you feel loved, you feel part of a team, and everybody's encouraging everybody and everybody's helping everybody instead of just being competitive. And it's like unacceptable in general in that culture to bully other people. I mean, that'd be so different than the schools that we went to.
Yeah.
And the other thing is also, of course, that when you look at different countries around the world, violence and non-violence is a very cultural thing. I mean, every country has some violence,
right?
But some countries have a lot more than others. And you know, there's a professor from Memorial University in Newfoundland. He wrote a book about that. He said, you know, you've got countries like Canada and Australia and the United States. People have a lot of guns, but there's way more gun murders per population in the States, like way more than in Canada and then in Australia. And he said, you know, if you look at the British hero in a movie, James Bond, he has a license to kill, but he tends to try to get out of situations and not just kill random people willy-nilly. Whereas in the American movies, you've got like Arnold Schwarzenegger, the more people he kills, the more of a hero he is. Like violence is his first go-to. Whereas in Britain, it's more like, well, if you just lost your temper and started killing people, you're kind of a loser. There's like a different cultural thing. I mean, in England, you do have an element of young hoodlums that drink and they beat people up and kill people.
Yeah, I've noticed that there is this mentality that some people really adhere to, that aggression is an appropriate way to get your point across. You know, where I think the best way to get your point across is through good argument and debate. You know,
or even kindness.
Or kindness. Like for example, I remember I used to have a lot of Native friends like back in the day, and
yeah.
And there was like this one white racist guy, and he had made a comment, and they were all ready to like jump on him, right?
Oh, okay, like physically.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my thought is, well, not to go off topic, but racism is something that's taught. So why not unteach it?
If you jump them, it's going to reinforce it.
Exactly.
You know.
Why not teach them through education, right?
Right.
You know? So again, debate. discussion, education.
And most people that are racist, like if say for example, I really disliked Native people.
Right.
Time and time again, they've shown that if I get to know some of them, the racism disappears. People are mostly racist to people that they don't really know them.
Yeah. But I really don't want to get off topic here.
Okay, that's fine.
But I mean, it all goes back to what would be part of this like curriculum, that aggression is not an appropriate means to get one's point across.
Mm-hmm.
And we gotta teach people that it's by the content of our arguments, that we can make a point. But I think we covered a lot of good stuff in here.
Well, and the last thing I wanted to say is,
okay,
from the research that I've done, Finland is supposed to have one of the best anti-bullying programs, most effective that they know of.
Right.
And at least the last 5 years, it could even be longer, it could be the last 10, 20 years, I don't know, but when they assess how well students learn in school and how much they know and understand, the Finnish school system actually has shorter hours than almost any country. Like, in Japan, the kids go to school way longer and they have less vacation time in the summer. And in many Asian countries, and in Canada as well. But not only do they have a really good anti-bullying program, they also score the highest in learning and aptitude of any country in the world. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think if there's less bullying in the schools and there's more supportiveness in the classroom and the culture of the classroom, it's only going to help people exceed academically as well. So that again, it's not just the people aren't bullied, which is very necessary and very valuable.
Yeah.
It's also going to reap benefits academically and in society and financially, as you said.
Yeah, definitely. I think we got a lot of good stuff covered here.
Okay.
So we'll end it here, and thank you so much. This should, I think this would be worth Dr. Phil's time to watch this.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Take care, everybody.